Good evening. Thank you for joining me online. Looking at the verse of the Kesa. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creation. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creation. The Gata of Atonement. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. Three bows. The fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind to be present with us now. The fragrance of this incense fills our room, protects and guards our minds from wrong thinking. The fragrance of this incense unites us with precepts, concentration, and insight. We offer it for all beings. Homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I shall become one with the Buddha. I resolve that I shall each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk and awaken to his supreme wisdom. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I shall become one with the Dharma. The gates of Dharma are manifold. I vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. I shall attain it. I go to the Sangha for guidance. I shall become one with the Sangha. In the spirit of universal fellowship and as a member of the Sangha, I pledge myself to strive for the enlightenment of all beings. The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. So I want to do Tonglen tonight. Tonglen is a meditation on compassion. Similar to Metta Bhavana, but a little bit more about wanting beings to be free from suffering rather than just to be happy. So it's a little bit more challenging for some people, but work with it. And I had a Zoom meeting on Tuesday night with Stetson students, and the cat just insisted that she needed to be right on top of me during the meeting. And she is shedding because it's springtime. And I just noticed now I'm covered in cat hair. Anyway, so it's a little bit more challenging for some people, but do it, work with it, and we'll talk with it another time. So get into your meditation posture, whatever that is for you. Take a few deep breaths. And just relax as you breathe out. Just kind of let go of any tension that you find kind of on the surface. Letting it drop away. Let your belly be nice and soft so your lungs can fill and empty completely. Body, mind, and breath becoming calm as your breath settles into a comfortable rhythm. And we'll begin by cultivating goodwill for ourselves and others. Most of you are comfortable with this. You've done it many times. Begin as you breathe out, letting this phrase just ride silently on your breath. May I be happy. And opening up to that happiness that comes from within, that's found in the present moment. May I be free from animosity. And letting go of any thoughts of anger or ill will. Giving yourself freedom from that. For this little bit of time that we get to spend together. May I be free from stress and affliction. Not trying to cling to anything, not rejecting anything. May all beings be happy. Radiating that thought above, below, and all around. May all beings be happy. So this meditation is a variation on traditional compassion meditation as described in the Pali Canon. This comes from the Tibetan tradition, but I like it. It's a good approach to developing compassion, the desire that beings be free from suffering. And the name means receiving and sending, or sending and receiving. And you're receiving suffering and sending release, freedom, happiness. So this is a little challenging for some people because we don't really want to receive suffering, we want to reject it. And we don't want to send out happiness and things, we want those for ourselves. But what we find as we work with this is that we experience suffering anyway. And if we accept it, then we can work with it. So to begin, think of someone that you'd like to help, someone you know is going through some difficulties. Think of their name or let their image arise in your mind as if they're here with you. And think about the kinds of stresses that they're experiencing. So I use the word suffering. We really mean dukkha. It means dissatisfaction, pain, lamentations, distress, despair, all those things, from mild to acute. So think about what they're going through. And imagine that their states of mind associated with their suffering becomes a darkness or a smoke rising off of them. You can see it. See their fear, see their confusion, see their anger, see their worry, their depression, their sadness, their grief. And imagine that you're this compassionate being who can take that on and relieve them of it by just breathing it in down into your heart. And once in your heart, you can transform it with your compassion, your heartfelt desire that they be free from stress. You can take in their worry and send them ease. You can breathe in their grief and send them comfort. Breathe in their anger and send them friendship, kindness. Whatever form their suffering takes, you can take it into your heart and transform it into freedom from suffering, into happiness. And if you like, you can imagine, as you're imagining taking away their dark smoke or their darkness of suffering, sending them white, clear light or golden light, whatever works for you. And if it helps, you can think as you breathe out, may you be free from suffering. And now think of a loved one, spouse, parent, child, whoever is your closest, dearest loved one. And maybe things are going well for them, but you know that they experience all the usual forms of stress, of dukkha. Growing older, illness, mortality, being apart from people and situations they care about and love, being in situations or with people they don't like, not getting what they want. Those things are all stressful. And so imagine that again as a darkness or a smoke or whatever form that takes for you. And bring it into your heart. And as you breathe out, send in freedom. May they be free from suffering. And then do the same process with a friend. Breathing in their uncertainty, their confusion, their worries. And their existential stresses. And sending them relief, freedom, happiness. And again, just as with Metta Bhavana, don't engage in problem solving. You don't have to go and fix their difficulties. You're training yourself to respond to the world with compassion. May they be free from suffering. And do this now with an acquaintance also. Bring them into your circle of compassion. You may not know very much about them, but you know that they experience all these things that you and your friends and loved ones and the person that you wanted to help all feel. May they be free from suffering. And do this with your adversary. That can be challenging because sometimes the people that have harmed us or that we think have harmed us, people who caused us trouble, we want to cause them trouble. We've suffered because of them, we want them to suffer too. But that really doesn't help us, it doesn't really hurt them. Recognize that The unskillful things that they've done have been the form that their suffering takes as it comes toward us. So we're accepting it anyway, or we're getting it anyway, whether we accept it or not. So we might as well accept it and use it to develop our capacity for compassion. So what suffering are they experiencing? May they be free from suffering. And finally, all beings, may all beings be free from suffering. And as you're doing that, realize that you share the same forms of stress with every living thing. Birth, death, illness, old age, separation from the loved, association with the unwanted, getting what you don't want, not getting what you want. We all experience that. So accept your own into your heart and send yourself freedom from suffering. And send all beings freedom from suffering. To end this meditation, take a few deep breaths and just settle your attention on the breath somewhere in your body, the tip of your nose or your belly. You have an infinite capacity to absorb stress, and you have an infinite supply of compassion. It's always with you whenever you need it. Okay, well, I hope that went well for you. Um, so I mentioned last week that I thought a good use of our time together would be to sort of go through kind of laying a foundation for contemplative practice. And I talked about how people generally come to uh, Buddhist services and things like that for three reasons. And so I was going to talk about this in three parts. And so this will be the second part. So we're approaching contemplative practice from the standpoint of three reasons why that you might want to set aside some time in your life for training your mind. And I mentioned that people tend to tell me that they come to Buddhist meetings for three main reasons. They want peace of mind, so to reduce stress, and I'd say that's probably the number one that brings people in. But then they want to increase happiness. They want to feel more joy in life. Less stress is great, but we also want to feel good about life. And finally, people look for a way to connect with the sacred, and they might not use that word, but once we've reduced our stress and start feeling happier, we generally want to sustain that in part through seeking really a sense of purpose and meaning, connection in life. So last week I talked about the stress reduction one. That's kind of the first one, and it's not really the low-hanging fruit, but it's the one that people go after most often, and it's kind of the one that you need to get out of the way before you can do the other stuff. But there is kind of a continuum of practice here, you might say. So one of the steps in stress reduction through practices like meditation is to let go of thoughts and value systems, I guess you could say, that lead to stress. And then another is to start developing good values and good thoughts that lead us toward fuller, freer lives. And so for most of us, it's not really enough just to let go of stress. We also want to cultivate happiness. Those two things go hand in hand. They're a little bit different in some significant ways in how we approach them, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So, but before I talk about how to be happy, I want to talk about why it's good to be happy. Every once in a while, somebody will tell me that they have a hard time wanting happiness for themselves. It may seem selfish to want to be happy. But if you can't find resources for your own happiness, it's very difficult to help others be happy. And it's also important for our spiritual progress. If we can't be joyful, we're going to have a tough time approaching the sacred. And the Buddha recognized this. There's a very famous discourse in which he's talking to a monk about enlightenment. And he says there are 7 factors of enlightenment which, when cultivated and developed, are conducive of full realization. In other words, these 7 factors, if you develop them, then this will take you to realization. Mindfulness, investigation of the Dharma, energy, happiness, calm, concentration, and equanimity. So maybe I'll give 7 Dharma talks about that. But most people, coming in are not seeking full realization, at least not at first. But happiness has practical benefits also. So cultivating positive emotions actually reverses some of the physical effects of stress. And so it results in a longer, healthier life. And we create some emotional resilience. So when bad things happen, we suffer less. So when people feel good emotionally, they tend to be more creative and find more meaning in life and things like that. So the pursuit of happiness is not a selfish endeavor. When we develop the mental states that are most associated with happiness, we tend to feel more connected to others. And when we feel more connected to others, we have more empathy, and so we tend to treat people better. And when we treat people better, we tend to be in a little bit better circumstances. And so these qualities that lead to happiness really tend to kind of compound themselves in good ways. And so besides mindfulness and concentration, which we looked at last week, we're going to look at kind of three main areas of practice when it comes to living happily or being happy or having happiness, however you want to put that. Forgiveness, gratitude, and kindness. So before I do that, though, I want to talk about what I mean when I say happiness. So in Buddhism, true happiness is generally stated in terms of total liberation. So when you do Tonglen, the meditation that we just did, if you really want to take that to its fullest degree, then when you start thinking, may I be free from suffering, may all beings be free from suffering, you're really wishing for enlightenment for yourself and others. And that's, there's this concept that you see a lot in Mahayana Buddhism of really developing this heartfelt wish to achieve enlightenment for the sake of others. So you've got a fancy word, bodhicitta, it means mind of enlightenment. But we don't have to go all the way to that just to get started. If you're looking at the discourses, the original discourses, true happiness in that sense is usually presented as something that's mainly experienced by monastics. But then the Buddha said, well, there's other legitimate states of happiness that we can seek and that we should seek. The kinds of happiness experienced by householders, people with families and careers and all those kinds of things. So I think it's helpful to think of happiness as a state of mental being that is generally pleasant, with a preponderance of positive emotions, and which is sustainable, renewable, and kind of self-perpetuating. So, in other words, what is happiness? It's this mental state that's generally pleasant, maybe not always pleasant, generally pleasant. So with a preponderance of positive emotions. So of the emotions you feel, there will be a lot of good ones or pleasant ones, and which is sustainable, renewable, and somewhat self-perpetuating. In other words, it should feel good much of the time and be resilient enough that when something happens that doesn't feel good, we can feel bad and then return to feeling good reasonably quickly. So true happiness should lead to more happiness. It shouldn't disappear entirely just because circumstances become challenging. So think about it, happiness in terms of along the lines of being in good health. If you could say you're healthy, that doesn't mean you're not ever going to get sick. It might mean you'll get sick less often. It also probably means that if you get sick, you'll have a better chance of recovering fairly quickly, and maybe you won't stay sick as long or get sick and that sort of thing. And similarly, happiness should make it more possible to endure periods of unhappiness. And it should lead to more happiness. It should feel good emotionally and physically, but also be good for us, not just individually, but healthy for the circumstances in which we live. So to give kind of an opposite view, to kind of set this against something that many people find make them feel good, like drugs or drinking, that can produce positive emotions, but they don't. It's not self-perpetuating. I mean, an addiction, sure, you might keep using the drug over and over again, but the euphoria that it creates becomes less and less of a payoff. and it creates a lot of unpleasantness at the same time. And so real happiness, the kind of happiness that comes from spiritual development and that sort of thing, the kind of stuff we're going to talk about, you really can't have too much. If you do too much of it, it's not going to end up making you more unhappy, right? So I don't want to just talk about this. I want to give you a little bit of time to think too. So if we were all in the same room, I'd ask you to respond to something, but I want you to try something anyway. And most people say that this leads to an improved overall sense of well-being. So while we're sitting here together, I want you to write down 3 things that have gone well for you today. 3 things that have gone well for you today. Type them into chat if you want to, and then I can look at them later. Or just jot them down on a piece of paper, or if that's really inconvenient, just think about it if you want to, kind of make a mental note. But think very deliberately about 3 gifts that you have received so far today. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to think. And then while you're thinking, I'll share mine. So I worked at the university today, volunteering at the information desk. And it overlapped with lunchtime. And the fellow in the coffee shop made me a really good cup of coffee and a very tasty sandwich, which he toasted just right. It was very delicious. And I had a nice bike ride later on. There was a beautiful breeze. The weather is just gorgeous today. So there's this nice cool breeze, and so that was extra enjoyable, especially when the breeze was coming from behind me. And I'm serious about that. It felt really good. I mean, I went really fast sometimes because I would get this nice tailwind, and it was very cool, and it was good. And the third thing is that I got to attend a free online panel discussion about equity, and that gave me some things to think about that I think are going to be helpful and useful. So I'm going to give you some homework too. I'll give you something to work with between now and next week that I think might help you also. And I thought about this after this morning. So I have a meditation group, faculty and mostly staff at Stetson that I meet with on Wednesday mornings. And last week I had suggested this as a mindfulness practice to work with during the week. So for one day, at least, whenever you thank someone, specify what you're thanking them for. So in other words, somebody opens the door for you, say, thank you for opening the door for me. And try to do that 10 or 20 times that day. So, and you'll see that it's very interesting what happens when you do that. So I had asked them to do that last week. And then I asked them if anybody had done it and if they wanted to share what came up. And this one of my colleagues, it really had blown her mind how much it changed her day to realize the extent to which people were being helpful to her and that kind of thing. And a lot of people have that experience. So there's a more intensive method of using gratitude and things like that as a method of self-reflection. It's called Nikon. Spoken about it before. Not going to talk about it today, but there's resources on our website that can help you go deeper into that if you want. So we don't often think of contemplative practice in terms of something you do, right? I talked last week about contemplative practice. We talked about meditation and things like that. So usually it seems fairly passive. You're sitting still, contemplating your navel or whatever it is that you're contemplating. But really, contemplation is an active process. When you're doing something and being aware of how your mind is involved with that action, then that's contemplation. So, so that's kind of what we're getting at with these being aware of things that have supported you during the day or that have benefited you during the day. It changes how your mind is engaging with what's happened during the day. To look, to pay attention skillfully, to what's good in your life. So let me go in a little different direction here, just to kind of illustrate a point that I want you to consider. So some of you, I don't know who's online, I haven't looked, but some of you may recall when President Jimmy Carter made this statement that he had sinned. He said he had lusted in his heart. And so that got some laughs from a lot of people. And so I think to the average American, the idea of lusting in your heart is pretty low on the sin seriousness scale. But Buddhists and people who are generally progressive in their attitudes towards spirituality don't really think a lot about the concept of sin because it implies judgment. The idea is that sin means some divine being or authority figure sees you do something and judges it as a sin and you sinful. And we don't really think about it that way. But I'm going to use the word anyway just a little bit because it's kind of direct. What if we were to define sin as an action that leads to suffering for someone? So we could go even a little further and add that sinful action tends to lead to more sin, because we can see, if we're observant, that to willfully engage in something that causes suffering tends to lead to more suffering. Most people probably don't think that something is really harmful unless we physically do it. But in Buddhism, we talk about karma in terms of actions of body, speech, and mind. So let's look at actions of mind. Can something that only happens in the mind be a sin? Well, think about this lusting in one's heart idea. There's a difference between a thought, which is a mental phenomenon, and thinking, which is a mental action. Thoughts arise, actions produce more mental phenomena, and also potentially actions of speech and body. So a thought arises. Now, I don't know what Carter actually did, what came to his mind, but let's say he saw an attractive woman and a sexual thought arose in his awareness, or maybe a physical sensation. That would not be a sin in the sort of Buddhist view of negative karma. We can't control what arises in our awareness any more than we can control who steps into a crosswalk while we're sitting in a traffic light. But suppose you're sitting in a car waiting for a light to change, and somebody you really don't like, somebody you're really not getting along with at work or something like that, steps into the crosswalk in front of you. That's not your doing, right? They can walk across the crosswalk. You didn't have anything to do with that. But if you hit the gas and give them a little bump, that's yours. You own that. And it's kind of the same thing with what arises in the mind. That's not our doing. We don't make thoughts arise. Whether we keep our foot on our mental brake or let the mind sort of run amok, that's our choice. That's our doing. So I don't know what Carter did. If lustful thoughts arose and he let them go, then there's no sin involved. And I don't really want to go into it any further than that because I don't really want to think about Carter and his sex life. Anyway, my point is this: if you want to develop a happier mind, you practice happier actions, starting with actions of mind. So what we nurture grows. When stressful thoughts arise, we let them go. And if on top of that, then we deliberately practice good actions, then happier ways of thinking grow. Cultivate gratitude like we just did when I had you write some things down. That increases people's overall sense of well-being and thus happiness. We tend to see positive emotions as symptoms of happiness. If I'm happy, I'm going to feel good. It's really the other way around. And the Buddha kind of pointed this out, that positive emotions are a cause of happiness, not a consequence of it. Emotions result from the mind's interaction with things that happen. So you can cultivate positive emotions by training the mind to interact in positive ways. And when you do that, you're happier. One of the actions of mind that creates happiness is a tough one for a lot of people, which is forgiveness. I get this one a lot from people wanting to know how to forgive. I'm not going to go into it today. It's too complicated a conversation, but I'll talk about forgiveness sometime soon. But besides gratitude, kindness is probably the next most powerful thing you can do that produces positive emotions. So I want to do another short contemplation together. I want you to think for a minute about kindness that's been done for you in the recent past. Something that someone has done that was kind for you recently. And just focus on that for a minute. And as you're focusing on that, notice how you feel. Now think about someone else in your life, and it can be someone you like, loved one or friend or something, it doesn't matter who. But develop a heartfelt wish for them to receive a similar kindness. And notice how that feels. So we were together and having a discussion, doing this in a workshop or something. I'd ask you to tell me about that. And generally, when I do that, I hear from a lot of people that they feel happier after that little practice than they did before it. And you can try that. It only takes a few minutes, not like sitting and meditating for 25 minutes or whatever. You can just take a moment, think about something kind that has been done for you, and then wish for that kindness or kindness similar to that be done for someone else. Um, and you'll find that it changes your perspective on life for the day. Forgiveness and kindness both kind of operate on this basis of goodwill and compassion. Compassion, much like we did with Tonglen earlier, is a matter of recognizing suffering and then recognizing that it's good to be free from it and to have that compassion for others. The Dalai Lama has talked many times about how his religion is compassion. And he said once, the greatest happiness comes from the development of love and compassion. And I think that that's true. I think that there are lots of kinds of happiness and lots of ways to feel good. But I think in terms of ways that are beneficial to you the most over the long run, the more you can love, the more you can be compassionate, the happier you'll be. So if you want to continue to try to practice kindness, try this. I mean, this is pretty extreme, but you'll notice that it makes a difference. Do 5 kind things. So these are things that you would normally do for others in a single day. And to maximize the effects, try to make them all different and then write down how you felt later. So you have to think about how you're feeling at the time. They don't have to be for the same person. The person doesn't have to know about it. You can put money in, well, you're probably not going anywhere, but where you'd be putting money in a parking meter, but that would be an example. People are doing things like paid tolls for the people behind them at the toll plazas and stuff like that. Those kinds of things, and just see how that makes you feel. So anyway, I hope that this has been helpful to you. And I'm going to get the tablet now and see if you've asked me any questions or made any comments that I should respond to. By the way, when we build our temple in Deland, let's make sure we go ahead and wire it for video and sound. They had the As a matter of fact, Peter is asking me, and I was just about to comment on that. I did go to MIMS, to White Sands Buddhist Center, on Saturday for Buddha's birthday. I did not video it because this is what I was just going to talk about. They live streamed the whole thing from the temple in Texas. And so there wasn't really anything to video on our end. We sort of joined in with what they were doing. And so it's probably still there. I'm not sure how to find it. But if you go to White Sands website, and there's a link there to the monastery in Texas, and you click that, it'll probably take you there. And if not, you can, if you get their emails, you can email Michelle. She can probably tell you where it is. The problem with it, though, it was a very long service. It was nice. I mean, there was a lot of special chanting and stuff that they did. Most of it things that I've never seen or heard before. But Venerable Kai Tien wanted to do a lot of praying for COVID sufferers and that sort of thing. And so it was that. It was almost all in Vietnamese, and when he was speaking English, because the sound quality, because of the echo and ambience, couldn't really hear it. So it was kind of a shame. Oh, so you saw it. Good. Peter, if you know where to find it, if you can, go ahead and post the link to that in chat here. So I don't see any other questions. Yeah, I didn't understand what was being said either. I had no clue what was going on. But I talked to Michelle and Dr. Chow about it a little bit later, and so I kind of found out after the fact what was happening. A lot of generating merit and then dedicating it to people who were suffering from COVID-19 and that sort of thing. So if you want to keep working with the Tonglen meditation, if you go to the Volusia Buddhist Fellowship website, there's a tab for Loving Heart, Peaceful Mind resources or something like that. And it's got the Loving Heart, Peaceful Mind workbook, which you can download as a PDF. It's free, it's there, it gives instructions for it. And there's also guided meditations there. So if you want to work with that more, that's how you can do that. So I haven't seen any more questions show up. And it's almost 8 o'clock, so we'll do the dedication. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now, and offering flowers, candles, and incense, hearing the Dharma and training the mind, great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures, for the 16 guardians and all protectors of the Dharma and their relations throughout space and time, for all ancestors of the Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance. Let all karma be resolved in the mind flower bloom in eternal spring. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of this Sangha. May their vows be fully realized, and may they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for those suffering from violence and those who grieve for them, for all those living in oppression, for all who are imprisoned who should be free, for all refugees from violence, hunger, and catastrophe, man-made or natural. We especially pray for the health and well-being of all those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, and all those working toward the healing of those afflictions. We pray for those suffering from COVID-19, those working to protect them and to treat them, and those grieving for those lost to this pandemic. At this time, we have members of our congregations, friends, and loved ones suffering from other diseases and who are grieving for loss. We pray for them and send loving thoughts their way. May they all be serene through their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. Sabe sata sadahantu avera sukha jivino katang punya phalang maham Salve Bhagi Bhavantu Te. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share in the blessings that spring from the good we have done. He bows. And I bow to you for attending. Thank you for being here. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. And I'll see you Sunday, if not before. Oh, and don't forget the Zoom meeting tomorrow.